Hi there, my name is Matthew Pilla, and the purpose of this informative presentation is to provide a sense of wonder and excitement for Mars exploration. I will provide scholarly information regarding Mars and will clear up some common misconceptions and myths about the planet. My agenda is as follows: Introduction to the Red Planet, Early Observations, Theories about Mars, Current Exploration, Future Missions, and Final Thoughts. Now, introduction to the Red Planet. Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun, and it actually has two dwarf moons. Mars is only about half the size of Earth, and that contributes to some of its gravity characteristics. Gravity on Mars is only 1/3 that of Earth's, so things are a lot lighter on that planet, and say if you were to jump, you would be able to jump a lot higher. If you stood on a scale, you would weigh a lot less. Despite its red appearance, it has an average temperature of -81 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty cold. I used to always think because of the red planet, I thought it was a hot environment, but it's actually further away from the Sun than Earth is. Its distance to Earth varies due to the elliptical orbits, ranging from 36 million miles to over 250 million miles. Mars has a diameter of 4,225 miles, and it would take about 6 Mars planets to fill Earth's volumes. Now, Mars has a vast landscape with volcanoes, canyons, and channels, apparently carved by catastrophic flooding long ago. Now, who discovered it, when, and what's its historical importance? While Mars can be seen by the naked eye in the sky, it has been observed since the ancient times. However, in 1609, Galileo Galilei used a primitive form of a telescope to observe Mars. He was the one who went against the Roman Catholic Church and actually published his scientific backing of the Copernican theory, which states that the solar system and its bodies orbit around the Sun. Everybody thought at that time that everything orbited around Earth and that we were the center of the universe. He was actually later sentenced to life in prison for his heresy. Early observations: what the ancients saw in the night sky and how it was identified. In the earliest days of Mars observation, all that was known was that it appeared to be a fiery red globe in the sky, and it had a movement unlike any other star. The Egyptians were the first to notice that the stars seemed fixated in the sky and that the Sun moved relative to the stars. They also noticed 5 bright objects in the sky, which are now known as Mercury, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn, and that they moved in a similar manner to each other, different from the stars. They called Mars the Red One. After the invention of the telescope, how did our ideas change about Mars? In 1659, the astronomer Christian Huygens drew Mars using advanced telescope of his own creation. He recorded there was a large dark spot on the surface, and he also noticed a South Pole cap. This was used to calculate the Mars was roughly a 24-hour day. In 1698, he published Cosmotheros, which discusses what is required of a planet to support life and speculates about intelligent extraterrestrials. This is one of the first published theories about extraterrestrial life, and it took place back in the 1600s. It's very revolutionary. Now, some theories about Mars and some myths, early ideas. The Greek and Roman mythology tells about a god of war, the son of Zeus and Hera, who was despised by their parents. The Greeks called him Ares, and the Romans called him Mars. The Greeks portrayed him as hateful and murderous, while the Romans, who glorified war, they considered him a mighty warrior. Some Romans actually worshipped him and left sacrifices on his altar. So it was the blood red color of the planet that inspired the Romans to name the planet after their god of war. Some early observations were convinced that the red ball was a comet headed straight for us to destroy Earth. Early observations thought they could see canals on Mars, and these canals they thought were made by intelligent beings, which was later to be proved false. Touching on the intelligent life, the thought of Martians has plagued our imaginations and has gone even as far as erupting public mass panic with the misinterpreted radio drama from Orson Welles, The War of the Worlds, back in 1938. It was basically a radio broadcast of a drama that people didn't know it was a drama, and they thought it was a real live broadcast, and it scared a lot of people that we were being invaded by aliens. Now, how does these ideas and alter the human race, and what drives us to explore the planet further? Mars has become a hopeful destination for many of the population. With worries of Earth overcrowding or destruction from unforeseen events, the scientific community seems to agree that Mars would be a great planet or a viable planet to colonize. Now, current exploration of the planet, when did we first send a rover to the planet? Well, in 1997, Mars Pathfinder returned 2.3 billion bits of information, including images from the lander and the rover, as well as about 15 chemical analyses of the rock and the soil, and extensive data on the winds and other weather factors. Findings from these investigations carried out by scientific instruments on both the lander and the rover suggest that Mars was one time a warm and wet place, similar to Earth, with water existing in liquid states and a thicker atmosphere. Now, the rover capabilities, missions, and what we've gathered, how is this important? In January of 2004, we sent two robots named Spirit and Opportunity, and they landed on opposite sides of the red planet, and they had great more mobility than the original Mars Pathfinder rover. These robotic explorers had trekked miles across the Martian surface, conducted field geology, and made atmospheric observations. We need to explore with these robotics before we send humans on to gather as much information about the planet as possible. After the success of Spirit and Opportunity, the Mars Science Laboratory, carrying the Curiosity rover, arrived at Gale Crater on August 5, 2012. Curiosity is twice as long and 3 times as heavy as the predecessors, and the Mars Science Laboratory will collect soil and rock samples and analyze them for organic compounds and environmental conditions that could have supported life now or in the past. The record of the planet's climate and geology is essentially written in the rocks and the soil, and the information that we find from them is critical. The rovers on board the laboratory will study these rocks, soils, and local geologic setting in order to detect chemical building blocks for life, forms of carbon on Mars. Will assess what the Martian environment was like in the past. Now, future missions. NASA is planning on sending a rover-type lander named the InSight in May of 2018, going to detect the fingerprints and processes of the terrestrial planet formation. It's going to measure the planet's vital signs. It's going to be able to dig underneath the soil, get down there to figure out seismograph information, to figure out what could have formed the planet, how did it form. Building on the success of Curiosity's landing, NASA is going to launch a mission in 2020 which will be furthering our exploration, getting us closer to the first humans to be on another planet. Roughly 63% of Americans believe that we will have human astronauts set foot on Mars before the year 2050. What does this mean for the human race? Well, it's a potential for colonizing another planet, reaching further into the universe in the search of life. Final thoughts? This Mars exploration can actually bring nations together. It could unite nations in the name of science. In regards to the Curiosity rover, the mission was essentially an international mission with a neutron-based hydrogen detector for locating water. It was provided by the Russian Federal Space Agency. A meteorological package provided by the Spanish Ministry of Education and Science, and a spectrometer provided by the Canadian Space Agency, among others. Do we have a duty to go further and push the limits? Are there ethical boundaries that come into play with space exploration, specifically Mars exploration? And I believe there do. A quote from George W. Bush was, "This cause of exploration and discovery is not an option we choose. It is a desire written in the human heart." And I believe in that statement. As we follow our hearts, we also need to think about the ethics involved with Mars exploration, and this was explained by McLean from Santa Clara University in the following 3 points. 1. Space preservation requires that the solar system be valued for its own sake, not on the basis of what it can do for us. 2. Space conservation insists that extraterrestrial resources ought not to be exploited to prevent and to benefit the few and the expense of many or of the solar system itself. Number 3, space sustainability asks that our explorations do not harm and that we leave the moon, Mars, and space itself no worse and perhaps better than we found them. In closing, we can learn a lot from Mars, like how our planets evolved into what they are today, and could actually give us a glimpse into the future of what our human interactions on this planet could end up as. We need to continue the exploration of Mars so that we can one day have human scientists step foot on the red planet to answer some of our many questions about the universe. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.